good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. I'd like to welcome you to this session on leveraging longer-term humanitarian funding for HDP Coherence. This is the first of 3 sessions under the thematic area of sequencing, layering, and integrating humanitarian development and peace coherence of Ideals Knowledge Sharing series. We'd like to inform you that this session is being recorded. Before we start, we'd like to let you know that all events within the series will be available in 2 languages, English and French. I'd like to invite everyone now to select their preferred language for this session. You can do this by clicking the interpretation icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It looks like a globe, and setting either English or French. You can choose to mute the original audio or listen to it at a lower volume. If you have any questions, you can reach out to my colleague Camille through the chat box. Throughout this session, we'll be using a shared Google document. You can find the link in the chat. So on page 1, you can go ahead and write your name, your role, your organization, and where you're calling in from today. One of the challenges of coherent planning and implementation across humanitarian development and peace programs is the fact that so much humanitarian funding is so short-term. Even when humanitarian funding is repeatedly renewed over a period of years, the inability to make longer-term relationships, commitments, and plans can limit the role that emergency programs can have in partnership with resilience and development programming. Today, we're going to have the opportunity to dig into the ways in which longer-term humanitarian funding can enable humanitarian programming to be a better partner in HDP Nexus planning and implementation. We'll hear examples of how implementers have overcome constraints to deliver flexible, longer-term humanitarian programming. This session is a dynamic dialogue between the host and the interviewees, and between them and you, the participants. They'll spend the first 45 minutes in conversation before opening it up to others in the audience to join in the conversation and share your experiences and questions. As questions or thoughts come up for you, please add them to the second table of the Google Doc on page 4. Our hope is that we can create a space for peer-to-peer exchange on the importance of longer-term view of humanitarian programming that can meet the challenges of today's complex and protracted crises. Before I pass it over to our session's interviewers, I want to acknowledge who's in the virtual room. Although I have lost my screen here, Matheson. I'm not going to be able to do that. I've got a bit of a tech problem. But so I'm going to pass over to this session's dynamic dialogue host, Meta Carlson. Meta leads the UNHCR's cash assistance programming in Jordan. She's a food security practitioner with a passion for cash and markets. She has worked in disaster response, development, and everything that comes before and after. She's worked for a variety of INGOs, including Save the Children and Mercy Corps, also with USAID in the former Office of Food for Peace. So with that, take it away, Meta.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I see there's a couple of known faces and names among the participants. It's really nice to see you, and greetings from very sunny and arid Jordan. Thank you, Nick, for having me, and the rest of the Ideal crew. Thank you for having me. And joining me today, I have 2 guests, Anthony and Sadhu. So Anthony is currently the Chief of Party for USAID's BHA-funded Complementary Action for Resilience Building, or the CARB program in South Sudan. CARB is a consortium of 5 INGOs implementing a multi-year emergency food security project in 8 counties in South Sudan. Originally from Uganda, Anthony has 20 years of experience in humanitarian development and development assistance programming across 15 countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Caribbean. So he's making his way around the world. Sadhu is our other guest. Sadhu Sumana is an agricultural economist who's currently the Agricultural and Rural Livelihoods Technical Advisor for the International Rescue Committee, or IRC, for West Africa. He too has an extensive experience over 16 years working with a wide variety of international NGOs, designing and implementing short and longer term food security and livelihoods programming in complex and volatile contexts. He's based in Niger. Anthony and Sadhu, welcome.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Okay, so Anthony and Sadhu, give us a little bit of context. What's the context in which you are working in? What context are you coming into the dialogue with? How about we start with you, Sadhu?
Thank you very much, Matt, and welcome also for the participants. So, as a, a technical advisor for agriculture and rural livelihoods, we are working with IRC, supporting all IRC countries in West Africa where they are implementing agricultural and livelihood programming. So we provide technical support, technical guidance for proper project design and also quality program implementation. And also we try to facilitate cross-country learning and also scale-up opportunities. So the lesson learned are adapted to the specific countries, and also we support them in the design, in all the process, and also longer term lesson learned, and also how we can scale it. That is the case of today's session that I'm going to focus more on, where we implement a lesson learned in how we can leverage sequencing and also integrating resilience programming intervention in humanitarian program pathway to reach sustainable change in fragile contexts. Over to you.
Great, thank you. So in West Africa, you're dealing with a wide variety of different contexts, right? So there's environmental, sort of slow onset emergencies, rapid onset. There's also violence. Those are the main shocks and crises in the region, correct?
Yes, in West Africa, most importantly, when you look at the different shock track, we have climate change. Climate change, it can be the slow onset in some specific area like the Sahel. It can also be the rapid onset in the same context, and also in the Great Lake also we are observing the same type of shock, which most importantly for the rapid shock onset of climate change is the flooding, which is presently occurring most importantly in Chad, in Niger, resulting into the death of several lives, destroying of livelihood assets, and so on and so forth. And also we are also experiencing conflict. We have the three country borders, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali area, and we also have the Great Lake Basin area, which is gathering Nigeria, Niger, and also Cameroon and Chad. So we are between the two type of climate shock. But in the Great Lake also we have also the most importantly the climate change. Also we also operate in the East Africa, where also we are having the same type of shock.
All right, so quite a dynamic region. What about you, Anthony? What's the context in which you are working in South Sudan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mata. Yeah, as Mata has already introduced, we are implementing a program and a consortium called the Complementary Action for Resilience Building in South Sudan, which was basically a response to the APS invitation. Now, the context of South Sudan is that South Sudan has been dependent on humanitarian assistance for a very long period of time. Those who are old enough may remember in the 90s, we had what used to be called Operation Lifeline Southern Sudan, which was basically an arrangement for provision of humanitarian assistance to Southern Sudan and establishing the peace corridors. And then, that involved to the relief to development continuum, which was still an effort of providing humanitarian assistance, but trying to bring in development related activities. Then it moved on to linking relief, recovery, and development. And still, due to the effects of conflict that has been going on in South Sudan for a very long time, since as far as I was a young man, we've been knowing these conflicts, and that they still do exist. But that has also been now compounded with the realization of climate change effects, years of drought, years of flooding, so makes the whole situation very complex. So yeah, what we are doing in South Sudan with the CAB program, with the CAB project, is mainly focused towards improving food and nutrition security in Southern Sudan, but recognizing that there are multiple drivers of food insecurity in Southern Sudan, which cut across natural disasters, cuts across conflicts, cuts across social behaviors and customs, and there is always a back and forth between a need for humanitarian assistance, and then we kind of move into starting development activities, but then you are struck with another disaster, and then you have to have a rapid response mechanism to respond to that. Yeah, so that's the kind of context we were working in, and within the CAB, we're really trying to look at how we can use the framework of sequencing, layering, and integration to address some of the vulnerabilities that the communities that we work with face. Yeah, so I will be in the course of the conversation drawing on and sharing some of the examples that we do have, but also some of the learning and the experiences and adaptation of a period of time that NGOs have developed in Southern Sudan. Yeah, so happy to be part of this conversation, and welcome to the audience and to my colleagues, Sadu and Mata. I'm happy to have a dialogue together with you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's interesting, all of us have been, we've worked in humanitarian response, humanitarian assistance, and also longer term programming. And knowing this particular donor, if it was the Office of Food for Peace or OFTA before, and now BHA, like, why do you think there's a longer term response on this one? Like, what do you think, what's the rationale or justification for having a longer term program that meets humanitarian and medium to longer term objectives? Anthony.
Yeah, I think first of all is the realization that there will always be a need for humanitarian assistance in Southern Sudan because of the context is conflict ridden. It's experiencing climate change issues, but also we cannot wait until we address humanitarian needs to be able to start development activities, and that's compounded with the fact that conflict is one of the parameters in the whole equation. Yeah, so there are to achieve peace is a process. It's not a project, So yeah, so there is really a very compelling need to have first longer term funding to be able to have these activities implemented, and to be able to build those relations that are necessary, social relations at the community level, and also to be able to really moving people from dependency on humanitarian assistance to be self-reliant, on their own, that takes time. So it is easily something that can only done
With longer term financing.
Yeah, with longer term
Yeah,
financing. Yeah,
yeah.
really becomes so challenging if you have 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so from the experience in South Sudan, it really doesn't work that way. And there is really a general agreement that we need to have longer term funding. And I think the triple nexus framework is probably the best to move it forward.
Yeah, because it's sort of the recognition of how dynamic these environments are, where if there is an outbreak of violence, it creates an emergency situation, but you don't want to lose those longer term investments, right?
Yeah, that is true. And then within the longer term investments, if there is an emergency situation, you want to minimize the impact of those emergency situations,
Right.
So
not backslide.
not backslide. Fall down the slope.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, what about you, Sadhu? Do you have anything to add about this?
Yeah, the most important thing I would like to add, if you look the past 2 decades for West Africa and even for the East Africa, the number of shock and also victim increase from year to year. And also there is a repetition of emergency intervention. There is a limited program, longer term intervention, because there is a lot of need to save life, to protect assets, and so on and so forth. So it is intentional at IRC level in 2020, where we are reviewing our global strategy to see how we can make use of our past experience, and also how we can make use of the context dynamic, and so on and so forth. So under the economic recovery and development, we come to agree and put together a TOC that can help where the program is flexible, where the budget is flexible, and also where the context it is feasible, to see how we can also use our entry point emergency, continue with recovery, and also implementing longer top of longer term intervention. But it is intentional, and also at times it depends on the context. We appropriate some kind of approaches, some kind of methodology that even we are addressing the basic need, the current need, we can also do the foundation for longer term or recovery intervention. So the adjustment is done while we are providing the immediate needs. We are also trying to do the foundation for recovery or longer term intervention. So but as I mentioned, it depends on the context. It depends also the profile of the beneficiary and the communities, and also it depends on the policy of the country where we are working. So just in top of what my colleague has already said, yeah, we have no choice. We have to look the possibility to use emergency funding to lay the foundation for early recovery, for development, and so on and so forth. Need is increasing, and there is a lot of aspects to be addressed.
Well, it's interesting as you guys are talking, before when we, the community, had these sort of short-term emergency programs, it was like one project doing emergency and one project doing development, and there wasn't sort of this common thread. And so by having these longer term emergency program, you're sort of providing the community and the populations that you're working with continuity, right? So it's the same people working and building trust in the communities in both crisis and development contexts. So it's interesting. It sort of creates a different dynamic with the communities, does it not?
Yeah, I think that it does exactly. And also not even the communities, even the stakeholder. Remember here in 2017-18, the group going through the different dynamic, and also using the recommendation from the government. I think that we came together and set up the Nexus committees, and also try to see how among stakeholders we can coordinate. So I think that, it is giving dynamic, and also giving a change for either from the community side, but also from the different stakeholder side.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on what Sadwa said, yeah, it is giving dynamics to the community, but also I think it calls for a really very intentional and close cooperation between aid actors, state actors, as well as the community structures themselves. And in that process, it establishes these relationships that first takes time to develop. Two, it's difficult to compartmentalize them into, say, you know, responding to emergency, but, you know, nobody's talking about development, or nobody's talking about to security or peace. Yeah, so it really kind of brings everything together, and all hands put on the table to, as we say, achieve a collective outcome through complementing and collaborating with all the partners involved.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, for me, is a little the dynamic that's coming up. That's a kind of a little bit different from the traditional humanitarian assistance that we go in, you know, we have a specific need to address is food. We do that, eat health,
and then nutrition. We're like, okay, see you guys later.
Oh yeah.
yeah. You guys are fine now. Yeah. Okay. We'll just wait for somebody else to come in and help you out. Yeah. Sure. I mean, it's true. And the point that you make about, you know, it's about ultimately the objective, or sort of what we want to get out of our work, is to build these relationships so that there's this trust, so that we can work together, and together we can sort of move this forward. So thinking about, you know, your past experience with shorter term programming, like sometimes I've seen programs that are, you know, 6 months long, or a year long, or maybe 18, or maybe it's a series of 6-month programs, right? Thinking about, we'll start with you, Anthony, thinking about this longer term approach to addressing humanitarian needs while laying a foundation for development. What's like, give me an example of one thing that you are doing under your program that you would never have been able to do in a program of a shorter duration.
Yeah, great. Happy to share that. Yeah. One of the things we're really working towards is restoring rural livelihoods. And some of the rural livelihoods, they are mainly agricultural based programming. So we have a dynamic here whereby, as the project we're implementing suggests, is called complementary action. So first is complementing. So we are complementing populations that have been dependent on food assistance from the World Food Program, and some agricultural inputs from the Food and Agricultural Organization. And we are working with them to start to improve their own production and productivity through what we call our technology transfer approach, which is a whole sequence of activities that majorly, most of them related to food production and productivity, but there are others from other sectors, as I'll try to explain them as we move forward. So in trying to achieve that outcome through our technology transfer approach, we established what we call the farmer field schools, which is mainly it's learning by doing. Through demonstration plots. It is using local resources and the limited inputs. So we established these farmer field schools, and then we organize communities to come with us to practice better agricultural practices, to practice different techniques by trying, through trials, plant in rows, plant not in rows, what gives a better yield, what's appropriate here. And then and then they develop their own locally tested techniques of improving production and productivity. And definitely the end result is to improve food adequacy at the household level. Then they do transfer that to their own gardens, where they apply what they learned as a group, and apply that to their own farms. And of course, also some they apply in their own farms, but also they have kitchen gardens around the household. So they
Can I ask you a question, Anthony?
Yeah.
Just about this. So is the time frame, your activity is about 3 years. So are you saying that over the course of 3 years, you're able to affect some level of behavior change and practice adoption?
Yes, I think we will be able to do that. It's our objective, and the early indications from some of our visits to the field, working with the communities. We see there's progress towards that. Definitely. We will have some evaluations to test that. We hopefully it will show a positive result. So just continuing on where I left before. So then they apply the techniques, and we support them with the necessary inputs that they are not able to get on their own. And sometimes it could be some seeds, which we have partnership with FAO, and some probably some tools. So they start producing, and we're already seeing people now, they are producing more than what they had before. And some of them would want to start, selling what they do produce, But we're telling them, okay, fine. The best way to do that is you have to sell it collectively. You have to sell as a group. Then you're able to bargain, and you're able to aggregate your products. So then we bring in another set of activities, which we call the farmer market associations, on top of the farmer field schools, and we build their capacity in negotiation, in aggregating, in sorting.
Oh, so you're taking them sort of that next level. It's not just about production, but it's engaging with the markets. Okay.
Yes. We're taking them to that next level. Engaging with the markets, and to ensure continuity. Some of them would want to be seed producers, and there is a whole set of capacity building that they need to go through to be a seed producer. And then and then because they're doing marketing, they are having external contacts, they're interacting with the government. Government sometimes requires them to get some certifications to be able, say, to be a seed producer. You need some certifications, or even to be a small cooperative seller.
So you're accompanying them through that process.
Yes.
Okay. So if I may just to switch to Sadhu for a moment, just to say, do you, within the programs that you support, because you're a regional advisor, so you support multiple programs in multiple countries, do you also see that in these, even in slightly longer program cycles, that the programs are actually able to affect change?
Yeah, I think that most importantly, when you look at the projects, the integrated support to the climate shock and conflict shock in Niger, we've seen it once. We have started to implement in 2018 with 1 year funding, but that was repeated in 2019, 20, and 21 when we started the small scale irrigation to increase and diversify the production and also income of the household. So as I mentioned in my previous intervention, we use the entry point as emergency. It is the lean season. We started with unconditional food assistance, and also in some communities that World Food Program is already operating. We top up on their own food assistance they are doing. Following that, we try to do also some cash for work activities to protect, including the area that we anticipate to use for small scale irrigation. Then after that, cash for work started the small scale irrigation. In the first year, we've been able to do the community engagement, the negotiation, the advocacy, to facilitate land access to the beneficiary that are more than 60% women from the same household vulnerable that we have been supporting during the lean season with the unconditional and also conditional cash activities. We developed the activities in the first year, but we have been able to scale up the activities with the vegetable gardening seed development with the following funding from the same donor within the same communities. We developed the vegetable gardening. In some communities, it is about 2 hectares. In some communities, it is about 2.5 hectares. So the average size for per household, it is about 250 meters square. And yeah, we set up some irrigation system, most importantly, the solar system that can facilitate the work, most importantly for the woman. So right in the second year, we start to see the household has increased their own production, and also they have access to food stuff that can diversify the
well, so that, I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, so you're raising an issue that you're raising you have raised something for me about which relates to my next question, which is about sequencing, layering, and integration. Sequencing, layering, and integration, they're terms that we use a lot. They're more than terms, they're also concepts. But I have to admit, all of us had a little bit of problem trying to find out what USAID actually means by this. So for you guys, Sadhu, you had said, oh, their communities were doing the, Anthony gave the example of the seed production, and then, also layering some marketing strategies on there to be able to facilitate that access for people. You, Sadhu, talked about like irrigation. So is that layering? Like layering different types of activities?
Yeah, from my side, I can say yes. When I took I provided the answer to as a field agent perspective. Yes, we have leveraging, layering as leveraging, because we leverage with the unconditional and conditional activities that has been done, and also in some communities also we leverage with already what other partners are doing, so that in the same geography of area there will not be any duplication. There will be also a scale up and also maximizing the impact within the same community. So it depends, but in one way or another, there is different activities that we try to see how we can make use of the existing activities that has been done to scale up or to maximize impact, or also to reach a larger number of people. It can be in some cases for our project, there are some internal leveraging activities, and also there are some external leveraging with other actors. The second thing, so
that also gets at it, where you're talking about you're layering different activities, but you also talked about geographic layering, right? Within the same communities, doing many different activities. And then you also touched upon sort of layering on top of what other people have done or are doing too. So there's organizational layering, geographic, and sort of technical layering. Interesting. So then going to sequencing then, for you, Anthony, what does sequencing mean?
I think before I get to what I think of sequencing, I just wanted to add something on layering. I think for us, really, layering is the overlaying multiple sector-specific activities in the same community. For our case, the key word is the same community. And then overlaying activities related to food security and livelihoods, related to health and nutrition, related to community disaster risk reduction, resilience, and social cohesion. So when you bring all these activities to achieve a collective outcome in a particular community, kind of this is how we use layering for the context of South Sudan. But it's very much in line with what both you and Sadhu said. Then now when we turn over to our understanding of sequencing, given how these words developed has been looking at humanitarian assistance. How do you then transition to development assistance, and then resilience, and then humanitarian development and peace building. So for us, how we understand sequencing is building on the existing humanitarian programs with development investments. So we have humanitarian assistance that has been going on for our case, WFP providing general food distribution or cash for work or something, short-term saving life projects. But now we adding more development-related activities on top of that. Still same communities, same beneficiaries. So this kind of how we do understand sequencing is you in bringing in the development component onto the existing humanitarian assistance work, then you kind of sequencing.
Yeah. And I think also, sequencing, I think you actually, for me, you gave an example, Anthony, earlier about, working with smallholder farmers to increase production. And then, once they get the hang of that, then you start focusing on the marketing and the commercialization and the seed replication, etc. So, I mean, that's definitely an example of sequencing too. Now, integrating, for me, is almost one of the harder nuts to crack, because integrating can mean many different things. But for example, one example that I know with BHA that they have done is, for example, when you work in the farmer field schools, you may integrate the production of healthy foods, green leafy vegetables, yellow fleshed potatoes, etc. So to be able to integrate nutritional strategies into, the agricultural production. That's just one example. But like, Sadhu, within the programs that you support, is there an example that you can share about what sort of can exemplify what integrating and integration means?
Yeah, thank you very much. As you said, most importantly, when you look about the different activities they are doing, we have different activities that integrate to each other, because we cannot address the resilience component of the household without giving access to different services and so on and so forth. So for the irrigation activities that I mentioned, there is integration with nutrition activities. So if the farmer group produce local crop, we have also set up some IOCF group that come on the same side to conduct some demonstration using the local product with high nutrition value. So they do the demonstration, how they can use it, and also they continue the follow-up to do the demonstration with the pregnant and lactating women within the same communities. And also, even at this vegetable gardening level, also there is a high integration between the sanitation team and also the food security team. So right at the beginning of the cropping season, so we call for those our sanitation team, wash team, so that they will come and do some demonstration of producing compost using the household yard ingredients, so that at the same time the household yard element will be used to produce as a compost. It can be the animal manure, it can be the waste from the household yard. So the compost produced is also from the communities that we try to integrate the wash component, we try to integrate the nutrition component, and also we try to see how also we can address the GBVA component by giving access also to land for the woman of victim of GBVA in the communities, or the woman, most importantly also the displaced people that lost the household man that has children that within the community also, we give them access to those opportunities so that, yeah, activities are integrated, but also at the community level, no one is left behind.
Right, right. That's good. Okay, so those are some good examples and very concrete examples. And it seems like from what you're saying is there's no one activity that's integrated or sequenced or layered. It's actually a combination of all these pieces fitting together, right? It's not this simple puzzle. So this series by Ideal is about the humanitarian development piece coherence, right? So I want to make sure that, you know, we've talked about meeting acute humanitarian needs, whether it's by natural disaster or chronic or climate change, for example, or violence, conflict, but also while building relationships and trust and building towards strategies through sequencing, layering, and integrating to be able to meet more medium term and longer term objectives, right? But how do you have some examples, or can you tell us a little bit more about the P in the humanitarian development piece coherence process? How important are community relationships and social cohesion to emergency response, recovery, and development? And are in what ways do the programs that you work with help to build these important factors of social cohesion and trust building for more peaceful futures? Let's go to Anthony first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, my pleasure, Mata. Yeah, I think just from the beginning, what I want to state is that the peace, where lack of it can be anything else, conflict and the insecurity and the rest. The lack of that has got a direct impact on the other two pillars and itself. Where there is lack of peace, then there is a higher need for humanitarian assistance because definitely conflict promotes a lot of things, displacement, even directly links to food production. People don't have time to be able to attend to the gardens. They are living in fear and the related. And also it has got a direct impact on any development activities. It hampers them. I mean, peace is a requirement, is a basic ingredient for any development to happen. And then conflict itself propagates conflict upon itself. It can escalate. So I think in that frame, that's I'm looking at the importance of the P from that frame. And in our project is things that we have taken into consideration very, very seriously. And we are trying to make sure that all our activities, what we implement, are conflict sensitive. And it's a requirement for us before we do anything to conduct gendered conflict analysis, which has helped us, first of all, to identify the different types of conflict that do exist in the communities that we're working in, because only once we know them can we be able to address the issues at community level and build lasting relationships within those communities. And then we would want to know who are the actors in a given context, and you'll be surprised. It may look like it's one set of one group, but it cuts across. You find youth between, for a case, between 16 to 24 active actors in conflicts for a case, raids and the related. You find men, 25 to about to 50, tribal wars and related. And it does not, it's not gender neutral, even girls of the same age and women as well, who sometimes even are propagators of conflict because of social dynamics and social pressures in the context of South Sudan. The cost of marriage is so high to get a lot of chaos. Sometimes you have to raid, and the mothers kind of feel you're coming of age, to show that you have grown
there's
up.
that pressure. Yeah.
Yes. So we need to understand those different actors, and also to make sure that the way we implement activities does not do harm. So it has to be inclusive, such that particular segments of the population do not feel disadvantaged. Specific programs that target youth, that target men, that target women, then these act as connectors in the community, not dividers. And sometimes the conflict is within the community, which we call intra-community, and sometimes outside the community, which we call inter-community. So specific examples that we are kind of implementing to build that agency of peace within community and between communities is people-to-people dialogues, where we conduct a series of peace building events. Can be dialogues, can be a football match, can be different contextualized activities, but also some opportunities for these communities to meet. And then what we realize is that once we have a conflict sensitive programming or set of activities, that it builds lasting relationships. Actually, frankly, we've had the situations where say women in a particular community were not able to cross over to the other community, but due to repeated interactions, repeated dialogues between communities, that trust begins to build, and they feel secure enough to be able to cross over to the other community. So
it's interesting. So it's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking about it, like, we always talk about peace as the sort of long-term objective, right? And you said it yourself. You said that stability is an essential ingredient for development. And so, especially in conflict type areas like South Sudan or some places in West Africa, in order to build peace, you have to build peace at the beginning. You have to start making those investments from the very beginning. So actually building peace is both a humanitarian and a development aim, right?
I agree with you fully.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Sada? Do you have something you want to add to that?
Yes, I think that's when you are doing a design in a very conflict or unstable area, the design should be more conflict sensitive and also peace building sensitive. So in the project that we are running in Niger, we have implementing one approach, what you call a community accountability committee. So these ideas came during the design. In 2021, we are finalizing the one-year project funded by the former OFDA. We did a participatory assessment, and we tried to listen to beneficiary. And we are very shocked in some communities to hear that about 60 to 70% say that, no, we just see activities is going wrong, and we don't even know who is doing it and what they are doing it. And we also cross-check with other evaluation that has been done by other organizations like REACH. So we have the same outcome within the same region of DIFA, that's there is a lot of humanitarian intervention. And as a program, as a country program, we say, okay, let us pilot a mechanism that will give more room for communities to participate and take decision and make sure that no one is left behind. That's what we put together, community accountability committees. It is different from the community feedback committee. It's different from any other one. The essence is that we are going to use it as entry points when we are going to run any activities within a specific communities. The first aspect we did, if the project is evaluated, we do the redesign with the community accountability that involve everyone. So in some area that we are operating in some displaced camp, we have the opportunity to gather all the different segments of the population and also all the different type of the communities that are together within that camp, and also where it is stable communities that also have some displaced people. We have opportunity to bring together the different group of communities and also the different segment, the youth, the women, and so on and so forth. So we did the redesign, we did the community action plan, and we think that after 1 year, as we observe, we have never had some frustration, some tension, and so on. So we are yet to evaluate because we have a 2-year sequencing programming. We are in the second year, but at the end of the program, we are going to evaluate to see how beneficiary will
how that went.
Yes, yeah. Another element in the same project is in the area that we have agro-pastoralist people. We have pastoralists and also agriculturalist people, the northern part of the farm for those who are online. So in that area, we have the pastoralists and we also have agricultural farming. So, and also this year, we have tried to restore about 13 hectares of degraded land. So we use the community participation and we make sure that we align with the government policy. And all the consultation was done within the communities with the different stakeholders to identify the site, to demarcate the site, and have the common consensus on how the land is going to be governed after the restoration. So we have restored the land in the first year. The second year, hand over to the community to continue to manage it. So we are yet to observe any frustration and tension. So there is a different way, but we can just limit our points for this 2 examples in top of what my colleague has already said.
Yeah, I mean, land ownership, access to land, and access to water are all, you know, conflict generators, right? So being able to address those in a way that does not give the perception that one group is benefiting more than another, one gender is benefiting, or age is benefiting from another. And that's hard to achieve, but if you're there with the communities for longer periods of time, you can build that trust so that people can understand how all the pieces fit together. So, you know, we talked about, you know, the focus, one of the focuses of the discussion is about the layering, sequencing, and integration. I mean, it's not easy, especially because we don't work in a vacuum, right? Thankfully, because one organization cannot do everything, nor should it, right? Because the community contributes. If you're fortunate, you have the government that contributes, you have other actors that are part of the formula. So maybe what are some of the challenges that you face with implementing sequenced and layered and integrated programs? Like, particularly if you're trying to layer and sequence and integrate with other actors, right? Like governments or other NGOs or whatever. What are some of the challenges that you face in this area?
I can jump.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think that most importantly for the same project in Niger, we are trying to layering and sequencing with government interventions on the livestock component, and also we try to work with other organizations for the food assistance to be as the lay foundation for other activities. So the first challenge is the delay. So I think that every organization has its own principle that we recognize and we accept also, but once we would like to take action in the appropriate times, so we observe some delay that can impact the quality of the program. And also, there is also a problem of overlapping. So if we would like to develop, to reinforce the resilience capacity of a given communities that we have already identified, the most vulnerable household, we start to work with them in the first year. In the second year, when we would like overlap with other organization contributions. So there is no appropriate layering. So they might say, no, we have to reach much beneficiary than the one that you have already. Or they might also say that in our planning, we are going to reach less beneficiary than what the number of households we are already working with. So two elements that we observe is the delay that can affect the sequencing and also the quality of the program implemented, and most importantly in the food security domain, and also the problem of leveraging the beneficiary, the group of beneficiary we are working with might not be the same, and it creates some disparity and some frustration at times.
Right, right.
What do you,
what about you, Anthony?
Thank you, Mata. Yeah, I think as we have all listened to what's involved in layering and sequencing and integration, is that there are so many moving parts. It's very dynamic, it's very fluid. Is not even linear. You know,
No.
sometimes
No.
sometimes it's matrix, it's cyclical. So there is a very high probability of not getting it right. And then if you don't get it right, the whole puzzle falls apart. You know, it's like a domino. Poof. Yeah, so it needs a lot of time. It needs a lot of coordination, dependency on others, and being accountable as part of this, I call it, system. So that's I think kind of sometimes the challenge that we do face when we doing sequencing, layering, and integrating, because it's all about a collective outcome that we are looking forward to, and then we are complementing each other depending on the comparative advantages that they do have, you know. Yeah, so yeah, but anyhow, with the very good planning, joint work plans, you know, continuous interaction, both at say the national level and the field level, field teams and senior team, it works out. It works out fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
coordination is hard though. Coordination takes a lot of effort. A lot of effort.
Yes, and sometimes then also there's also a kind of conception sometimes where we think that if you do actually connect very effectively, then you're achieving the things. It's more than that.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. But, you know, the points that you both raised about, you know, the timing, I mean, I think we can all agree, and this probably applies to life. Timing is everything. Right?
Yeah.
Like I remember responding to Hurricane Matthew in Haiti, and I know that one of you, I think it was Anthony that has worked in the Caribbean. I don't know. Oh, okay. Anthony was there.
I was in Haiti after the earthquake.
Yeah. Yo, okay, exactly. So, I mean, we all know that timing is everything because, for example, if you're talking about, you know, people whose crops and farming tools or, you know, livelihood assets have been wiped away by storm or conflict or whatever, and the planting season is coming up, they need their inputs before the planting season starts. It's a short window, right? And it has to do also with the example that Sadhu gave about, you know, they're layering with WFP so that WFP provides the food assistance. But if that is not timed correctly, it cannot necessarily contribute. It doesn't always necessarily contribute to the outcomes that you're seeking.
Yes, exactly. Just to jump in there to give you just one practical example. Yeah, you know, like our context is very fragile. We have a very small window to transport seeds, you know, normally which are coming from Juba. And if we don't pay a lot of attention to the timing, then we have missed the whole.
Then it's over. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah. So all the coordination that you've been doing to try to get the seeds from A to B is wasted because the seeds weren't able to get there in time. Yeah. So I think I hate to break it off because now I feel like we're sort of getting into a rhythm here, but this is meant to be a peer-to-peer learning event. And I think, you know, we've heard of different contexts from both Anthony and Sadhu, but we'd also like to hear from the others on the call. So Ideal has created this wonderful interactive approach where for the next 3 minutes, I invite the listeners to share your experiences, reflections, insights, or just, you know, thoughts that came to your head from the conversation, or questions that you may have for the speakers in the Google document, the one that's being shown right now on the screen. So if you look at this, you can add your question or comment. And if the question or comment resonates with you, please feel free to add a little star or plus sign rather to the table. And if you want to, you may put your name down, perhaps if you would like to elaborate on your question. So we'll give you a few minutes for this. We have some soothing music to reflect and write and contribute your thoughts. And we'll reconvene in a few minutes. If there are any questions about this process, please just drop them into the chat and the Ideal team will respond. So with that, over to the soothing music. Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry about that. Thank you. Okay, so we have until the next hour to be able to dig into some of the questions that the audience shared, and thank you for sharing those. So let me see, if we look through some of them, how about, okay, hold on, let me get it up on my screen. My apologies to everybody. The challenge of having many screens open at once. Okay. Oops, that was my 3-minute timer. Okay. So how about, so what about okay, let's go with the one that's right in front of me right here. And that's related, it's a question from Kara. It's related to the graduation approach. Now, graduation approach is different than the graduation model. And so I guess the question is, I would like to ask, or comment. I would like to ask if Anthony and Sadhu can discuss their experience in measuring and implementing a graduation approach. Is it possible to do in, like, how does it, hold on, I'm not really, Kara, if I may, do you want to pose this question? My apologies.
Hi, sure. No, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for the interest, and thank you both for initiating the discussion. I think it's a really great one. My question is really related to when I talk about graduation. It is a term used by different implementing partners and donors. So the graduation approach in this emergency and development context, can you talk about your experiences? And what I mean is the idea that the most vulnerable households graduate from their humanitarian assistance and build their resilient, diversified livelihoods. And the idea is to promote positive nutrition programs. This is happening all in one program. And as you mentioned earlier, this is a long game. This is a long process, and it's not necessarily achieved in a 5-year period. And I ask this question as this what you talked about earlier, the emergency to development continuum that we see that's being initiated by the BHA RIFSA programs. So what has been your experience in developing this and monitoring it and also to create this long-term development outcome? Thank you.
Well, keeping in mind, yeah, oh, absolutely. Thank you. You clarified your question very much for me. Thank you. And keeping in mind, as the point that Anthony brought up in the very beginning, a lot of these communities have been, there's long-term dependency on outside assistance, right? So, and also keeping in mind the shorter duration of these programs. So with that, I hand it over to Anthony or Sadhu, whoever would like to jump in here about elements of graduation within the programs and your thoughts about it.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in and hand over to Anthony. So yeah, the element of graduation is one component, and as all of you has already said it cannot be addressed within a very specific time of period. It needs a longer time period, but also it needs a lot of intervention regarding to behavior change and so on and so forth. So in terms of experience, most importantly in West Africa, we've tried to implement some graduation elements with highly vulnerable households. And most basically, right at the beginning, we try to see how we can support the household so that the household can be safe from the shock. We can start with non-conditional activities with the household to save the household life and also to protect the household asset. And we can top up with some conditional activities for the household to have opportunity also to join some economic group of activities and so on and so forth. And also from time later, we do some kind of evaluation to see those who can graduate to the upper level, and we can top up with either with supporting the same household to join the network or some other network. It can be either market access information network, it can be economic generating activities, small scale enterprise network, and so on and so forth. So that from zero to a certain level, we can say that, yeah, we have supported the household to change from poverty to a certain level of living well-being. So at the end of the process, I think that's most importantly, we try to keep some kind of evaluation to see the level of improvement, the last outcome improvement in the 4 to 5 years, but there is always a gap between the different program that has been implemented, because it is not every time that 100% of the household that started during the from the zero to be graduated. It is not easy. And one element that comes to justify it is at times we are working in a very proactive conflict area or a climate shock area and so on and so forth. So, but it is also a mechanism to bring change within a specific communities as we observe. I can pass over to Antonio if you have anything to add.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sadu. One or two things. In the context of South Sudan, as I said before, largely it has been so much in what we call IPC4, according to the WFP classification, and IPC5. And this definitely necessitates, emergency food assistance, general food distributions, and the related. Now, with the resilience approach, which CAB is part of, building communities' ability to be able to improve their production, we hope for the areas that we're working in to be able to move from a higher IPC to a lower IPC, from IPC4 to IPC3. But as we said, this is something that it takes longer. It may not happen in one cultivation cycle. It may need 2 or 3 seasons to be for that to happen. So I kind of guess this is how we look at the gradation in the context of South Sudan. The second thing I wanted to share also is the communities and household vulnerability to shocks and stressors, and through our interventions through community managed disaster risk reduction, where communities go through a whole process of identifying what are the risks that they do face through participatory risk assessments. They develop what we call community action plans. In the event that happens, what do they need to do? And then we fund those community action plans actually for them to implement a set of activities that will reduce their vulnerability, mitigate the impact, and helps them to recover faster. So I would also measure gradation is the reduction in the vulnerability of the communities that we are working with. And of course, we have other inbuilt rapid response mechanisms, just to make sure that when there is a shock, communities do not slide back to a worse situation they were in before. Yeah, so I think generally that's what I can share for specific measurement metrics and the related. I think I don't have that information right now.
So related to that, you mentioned the community action plans. Where is that through small grants? Is that the activity that's funding what the community wants to do?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It's actually money that we give to the communities to fund a set of activities that they have developed to be able to prepare, mitigate, and recover from any disasters, depending on the likelihood in their communities that they have assessed that may happen to that community. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And are there, so when you I don't know what the organizational sort of design is. It like, if you have a community action plan, is there like a community development committee that is sort of the one that's developing it? Like, how do you actually develop these? How are they developed at the community level? What's the organization?
Yeah, they are organized in what they call disaster risk reduction at the community level. So this
Okay.
is
So it's in within that framework.
yes, it's within that
Okay.
framework. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah, because that relates to another question that was raised about how to engage the communities, right? In order to be able to support them to gain the skills and experience and relationships that they need in order to be able to build on development gains and to bounce back from disasters and sort of get that communal social cohesion, those dividends that those yield in the development and peace space. So one of the questions was, that the community action plans and disaster risk reduction mechanisms, if you will, the committees, those are some participatory approaches that help to empower the communities. Right? Yeah, do you want to add something?
No, go ahead. Yeah, I was just
Oh,
agreeing
yeah.
with you.
So I guess my question to both of you would be, what are some other participatory approaches that your activities take that sort of meet those immediate, more acute needs or mitigation needs for disasters, but that are also yielding longer term dividends in terms of like the peace and social cohesion development space?
Yeah. Okay. Saru, do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I think that's, I mentioned it a bit during my intervention. For the program in Niger, we have what we call a community accountability committee at the each community. So we try as much as possible to bring all the different people living together to constitute that group, which will be the entry point. So, and also we work with them in the process to develop their own community action plan. And most importantly, in the livelihood area in DIFA, we try to see what is the climate shock, what are the different risks, and we have been able to develop climate risk mitigation plan with the same communities. But also, it is the same communities also that support the different activities, structuring the other sub-communities for the effective management. For the wash activities in the borehole, it is the same larger community that support them to put together a specific community that to manage the borehole so that it will prevent conflict between the user. And also, it is the same entry point that has been used to structure the community feedback mechanism that from time to time can provide feedback, and we give them the green line that so that they can provide the feedback. It can be a comment, it can be a suggestion, and so on and so forth to augment the larger community, and also they can provide the feedback directly to the local authorities or also to the program team. So they have the different channel. We are the ones sponsoring the green lights during the project period. In some communities, we are working with them 3 years. They are using the same green lights, and they have been able to connect. So there is a lot of work that is being done, and what the main objective is try to see how we can bring the different segments, and also how we can foster the community empowerment to decide what they would like to do, how they are
what
going
their
to
priorities
organize,
are, exactly.
what their priorities, and also how they are going to structure the community level governance. Because we have some principle, we have a policy, but at community level, I think that there are some elements to be considered that can be adapted to the context so that the people can structure themselves and manage very well the different their own intervention and their own priorities. And also, most importantly, in the Sahel, the common share resources, either pasture land, either water point, and so on and so forth. So that is globally what we are doing on the same project. But in other intervention, we also have community-based DRR committees also that are being set up, trained, and also the established community DRR plan that, as my colleagues say, we try to support them, how they can implement some activities to implement. Most importantly, when you look one of our program in Nigeria, that is our one focus. The community has been set up, been trained, and connect with the government entities, and also they have been equipped to do the early warning, and also there is a trigger level that if the alert reach, most importantly for the flood and other things, the project and other organizations support them to implement mitigation activities that are beyond their own capacity. So broadly, that is the two elements I can flag here. Yeah.
So related to that, and that's well, there's a few I want to just touch on briefly. You mentioned the word governance, Sadhu. So when we bring together these communities, right, the idea is that, oh, we're bringing people together, we're having them work together. It's a way to, you know, build relationships and whatnot. But to what extent are we promoting or supporting governance, like good participatory governance structures? And is that possible in sort of these shorter term programs, right? Because in my experience, when we develop these DRR committees or we set up these community development committees, there's like sort of, you know, sometimes there's a quota, like you have to have 50-50 men and women, or you have to have a certain number of women in the leadership positions. Like, so to what extent, and I'm taking some, you know, exercising some my role as moderator and facilitator here, but to what extent are we promoting good governance within the programs by putting these requirements on how these groups are structured?
Yeah, I think that's everyone knows that governance is one of the behavior change intervention that cannot be within a very short period of time. Within a year or 2 years, it is not easy, but within a very short period of time, I'm very sure that also we can do the foundation on which the community will, and also if the organization has the opportunity, like we others having several years of repeating emergency funding, we can just build up on it. So, and also the governance, it is not a very typical that we say this is the standard everywhere. It depends on how the communities are structured. And most importantly, it is defined around the resources that community level, they think that there should be some rule, there should be some consultation and so on and so forth. When you take, for example, the water points that we work in the far area, so community accepts that, yeah, the water point will be used for animal water use, and also the community, the water point will also use for human being purpose. But how are you going to structure so that there will not be conflict during the use of the different type of users? So there is some distance that government has recommended, like 50 to 100 meters. They are accepted to have a water point there that in which they pump water for the animal. And also some communities say that this is the period that animal they used to come to the water point. So at that time, they minimize communities going to the water point. So there is not any starvation, there is not any rule that come outside, but at times they make use of some element for the from the larger government policies to structure and redefine how they can organize the way that they are going to use and control and minimize the frustration around the common resources. That is one example I can flag. Over to you.
Yeah, and that relates to a question that Lisa also shared in terms of, you know, anytime when there's competition for resources, right, in these resource scarce environments, and that is a driver of conflict, but it's also a result of conflict. So, for example, one of the question was related to the program for Anthony in terms of how do you maintain some level of continuity, like that thread that we were talking about before, when there's frequent conflict that results in displacement or loss of assets or, you know, different climate shocks. Like, how do you continue to maintain that thread? And then when you're talking about, you know, Sadhu, you talked about the water points. Water points are always this big contentious issues, and there's lots of cultural factors associated with that. There's different priorities within the community, as you mentioned, for these water points. You have pastoralists that want to be able to use them, and farmers that want to use them, and households that want to use them. So are there specific peace building or social cohesion aspects of the program that you're taking into consideration to be able to mitigate some of these traditional sort of pain points within communities for tension? Anthony, you want to sort of respond to that?
Yes, yeah. I think I'll start with the piece that says how we maintain some kind of continuity in the face of shock that is kind of recurrent. I think for us that is the strong point of the design of the CAF program. We have inbuilt what we call rapid response mechanism, rapid response activity, such that if we have a flood that is happening, people are displaced, they need emergency humanitarian assistance, we are able to quickly activate our rapid response mechanism and respond to that. And yeah, it doesn't mean that it eliminates the impact of the shock. It will be there, but at least it helps people to get back as soon as possible, which I think is a smart way, as opposed to treating that as an independent disaster that has happened and kind of trying to respond to it, outside as a standalone emergency that needs to be addressed. So we have that mechanism kind of built in, and it's gone a long way in supporting the communities that we're working with. And just kind of to put it to perspective, over a period of 18 months, we have to activate the rapid response mechanism so far 3 times. And graciously, the support of BHA, it was quite easy to have that done fairly quickly, and of course with the coordination of all the other partners. Yeah, so I think this kind of it enables continuity. And then talking about peace and the related, yeah, it's a big issue in Southern Sudan. There are conflict at different levels, So we intentionally, just similar to the disaster risk reduction committees, we also have what we call community safety planning, where they go through all their individual household and the community safety concerns, and they go through the same process of identifying them, brainstorming them, what can be done and what needs to be done, develop action plans, what they need to do before, during, or after. And then we support them to implement that, and there are a range of things that are happening, gender-based violence, a big issue, addressing that. But it comes to even the physical safety of people, in a village where war has been happening for a long time. There was an they called armory, where arms are stored, but kind of got abandoned, and there are a lot of unexploded ordinances there. So it needs to be removed. So we have to bring this attention of the specialized organization in this area. They come and remove that. Yeah. So yeah, just sharing some examples and practically how we're dealing with it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So the next question that I want to go to is actually one that was raised by Noah. So Noah, if you're still with us, would you like to present your question to the group?
Yeah, sure. Let me just pull up so I can.
Sorry, I know I caught you off guard.
No problem. But yeah, thank you everyone for your comments. My name is Noah. I've worked for the humanitarian team at Global Communities. And I was just really interested in your comment on farmer field schools, because I am supporting BHA funded projects in Honduras and Guatemala, and we have focused on addressing food insecurity, and we have farmer field schools in those initiatives. And I'm just thinking, like, struck me your comment on sort of behavioral change and with the learning by doing practice, And a lot of these interventions that are ideally focused on achieving behavioral change, we're fortunate to have longer funded, like 3-year projects. But I think that when you look at how these projects are monitored, and sort of it is still very quantitatively focused in terms of like how many people are participating in the trainings, and you know, the amount of practices that are replicated. And I think that a lot of the time organizations default to just doing what's required because of limitations with resources. But in order to be able to really measure behavioral change and help facilitate that transition to development programming, just wonder what if you've seen that done successfully in other instances, or any recommendations that you would have for sort of going beyond the quantitative requirements for measuring those kind of interventions to collect data that's useful for facilitating that transition, for particularly for like food insecurity interventions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, as you rightly stated, the application, the knowledge, the attitudes and practices that households, communities learn from the farmer field schools is really important. From our experience, first of all, I think there has to be interest to participate in that. Sometimes if it is organizational driven, then yes, we'll probably be getting a lot of quantitative data, but qualitative behavior change impacts may be less. But if there is interest in that within the community, there will be also qualitative dividends. And how we've done is really understanding the community. We do a lot of what do you call livelihood zoning in the communities that we do zoning and mapping. And then from there, through a participatory processes, we identify what are the needs of the community. How do they really want to address their production and productivity issues? And then only that's why we in the areas we're serving, we're doing different things. We're farmer field schools for agricultural production, but also we have fisheries for those who have access to fishing. We have technical vocational education training, especially for the youth around urban areas. We have micro and small enterprises for the business oriented. So it's kind of really getting it right from the beginning. And then, yeah, making it something that when people participate, they see it's of value to them, and that it takes a lot of time. And of course, I think also the facilitation is very key, because if the facilitators really are able to work with the communities through the whole process, not necessarily showing up, checking, taking numbers and going back, but spending time with them, and providing sometimes inputs that they are not able to get, and this can act as a motivator. One of some of the areas we have, there is a problem, scarcity of water, so we kind of get these solar irrigation systems that we use. I mean, people see the value in that, and frankly, when they see, okay, if I cultivated one fadan, this is what I got before, but after this, I'm getting this amount of harvest, they adopt that. I mean, we in the areas we're operating in, we visited a number of households, and you find very smart kitchen gardens around their households. You go to their fields, you find healthy crops well taken care of in terms of agronomy practices. Yeah, so this is not to say everything is successful. There will be a few cases that yeah, individually at a personal level, people may have not internalized the technology, but I think it's a vehicle of change, as we call it, is a technology transfer vehicle. Yeah. Yeah.
Sada, do you have anything? Thank you, Anthony. Sada, do you have anything that you want to add in terms of sort of the role that data collection and monitoring can play to help inform sort of the next steps, decision making as you go on in that, to facilitate the transition from humanitarian to development to peace?
Yeah, I think that most importantly for farmer feed school, what my colleague has said is more important. That is the more intention from the community itself to learn and see how they can scale up from the learning. So most of the program we are using, we have some tools that we can follow the different process. The tool can allow us to some qualitative data, and also some tools that can help us some quantitative data. So as my colleague said also, yeah, the graduations come after 2 years or 2 cropping season, and we use those data to see how we can roll out or scale out the different competencies that has been occurred. Most of the tools that we use, we focus more on those who have graduated and the level of knowledge that they got. So based on that, in some cases of our program, we will draw the program staff that are directly implementing or supporting the FFS at the community level. So you replace them with the community member that has graduated, but you look at the different record from the different learner. Or also, we can top up with lead farmer approach, where we can say that given the technical skill that this group of people have acquired, they can do some support. In some cases of our program, we attribute 5 farmers that every lead farmer is going to support. In some program, we go to 7, but in some program, we can go up to 7. So to resume and to the answer, yeah, there are some tools that each organization that is implementing the approach can use to collect qualitative and quantitative data, and also that can allow them to take the decision and see how also to scale up the competence that has been acquired, that we call a transferable skill.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that's actually, it's an interesting point, because as we talk about sequencing, you know, there's that idea that once the quantitative or qualitative data reveals that households or a community or individuals have reached a certain benchmark, then that's the trigger for that next level of support. And you know, that takes a lot of sort of sophisticated coordination within the programming, as well as very streamlined monitoring and evaluation systems and processes. But definitely the monitoring and evaluation results and reporting can help trigger sort of that next sequence, right? So related to there's a question here that was something that came up for me too, and is also a little bit of my soapbox, if you will, related to fatigue. So when we talk about households, you know, oh, we like to layer, sequence, and integrate all the activities, and it's not just us, it's also WFP, it's also FAO, it's also IRC, it's also these people. You know, like one of the exercises I went through with one of my teams, it was actually in Guatemala, was I want you guys to map out, you know, on a chart when you're going to be doing these trainings and who your target groups are. And it was a very helpful exercise, because they were looking for the same women to be participating in several activities in the same week, yet they're supposed to be taking care of their children. They're also the water procurers, right? So I don't know, it's a little bit hard, because we need to have very integrated programming, but how do we balance that with people's lives and the many roles? Like mothers are just not caregivers, they're water, you know, collectors, they're water harvesters, they're irrigators, they're market actors. So how do we sort of reconcile that within this context of promoting SLI? Thoughts?
Yes, I think that's most importantly, you are right. And when you look at time when you are working, talking about irrigation, FFS, any work that you add additional time for the woman, I'm saying that the woman that is already 16 hours being busy in the day. So if you add something without taking care of that element to impair, and yeah, instead of reaching the outcome, we are going to change the expectation within the household, and also maybe it can be even a source of conflict. So one way, there is not only one way to say it, but one way in some cases we try to focus more on technology use. Most importantly, when we are working with small, with household, and also we are targeting women, we try to make use of technology that can use the time requirements, and thereby will not provide additional time occupation for the farm. When you look, when you hear back, I said that we are prioritizing on in our irrigation activities, solar system and so on and so forth. That is the main reason. So instead of the woman pass 2 or 3 hours to irrigate the 250 meters square, only 30 minutes is okay. She can water that portion of land, so it will not be an additional burden for her. In some cases also, when you are working, most importantly, integrating resilience activities, that the household should take different activities. We try to see within in the household who should participate in behalf of the household. When we are working on land restoration, most importantly, we look for the household, either the youth, the man, and so on and so forth, that can participate and give room for the woman to do other task activities. So, and also there is some community level, some discussion to see how we can structure the intervention from time, so that it will be more time sensitive. I saw in Niger, one of our program in literacy and numeracy, the appropriate period that has been indicated according to the policy, and also as we are trying to implement it, there is a burden. So they are recommending you to do it 6 months, and when you start, it will fall in the cropping season that the household is already busy. So we try to adjust those type of intervention based on time sensitivities, and also and so on and so forth. So there is not only one way, but there is different way to adjust and see how we can make more comfortable and also bring more change over the time. Over to you.
So Anthony, so I'm sorry to interrupt. And again, I feel like we're just now starting to get our routine. But we do need to move to the next section, which is the key takeaways. But if I may, just touch upon something that you had discussed earlier that I know is a mechanism that more and more partners are using, and it's certainly one that I always advocate for, is the rapid response mechanism, right? So could you talk a little bit more about that? And my add-on to this question is, do the communities have access to the resources, or is it the host, or is it your organization that provides the rapid response? How does that work? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mata. First of all, this starts from the point that when we're doing design, we come to realizations that normally the assumptions that we would do when we're designing a program, this remaining constant, this not going to happen, this, then everything will move fine. So that's the starting point. We actually assume those risks, the things we assuming are going to happen. And then once we assume that they are going to happen, then we say, okay, how are we going to deal with that when it happens? And we kind of develop its own mini program budget. If this happens, this is what we're going to do, this and this and this.
So it's
and
like
then,
sort of scenario planning based upon historical risks.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we embed that as part of the project. You know, this is as a rapid response activity, which is an amount that will only be spent when that happens, so that becomes part of the program budget because you've costed it and budgeted it and embedded it into your program design. So yeah, then we start the implementation. So when it does happen, then we said, okay, flooding may happen, it will displace people need some emergency relief, and then they'll get back to their normal lives and stuff like that. So when that happens, then we activate the rapid response, and normally it is just getting concurrence from the donor for us, which is BHA, that we want to activate the rapid response mechanism, which of course, it goes through our process. We have to do assessment, we have to identify the needs, who are the people in need, and what is the response going to look like, and then a quick short assessment and kind of a concept that we ask for concurrence from the donor. And normally, because it's already something that was anticipated, that is approved, is just to activate it. We need concurrence. Then once it's, we get a green light, then we activate the rapid response mechanism.
Yeah, sorry, Anthony, I'm sorry to interrupt. So we are running out of time. I'm sorry. There's so much to unpack here. It's so it's hard to sort of prioritize. My apologies.
No worries, let's go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for Anthony and Sadhu for sharing your experiences, as well as the questions from the audience, and my sincere apologies to the audience for not getting to all of your questions. I know there was TSE questions, there was other very relevant questions that we're just not going to be able to get to. But before we wrap up the session, I would like to invite the participants to share one thing that you're taking away from the conversation. Think of this as an opportunity to consolidate sort of what you've heard and what you've thought about as a result of the conversation, and think about like what you're taking away and how it's relevant to your work. So there is a form that Ideal has provided. Maybe someone can share their screen. It's farther down on that form that we've been using for sign-in and for questions. It's the one with the sunflower icon on it. So you can use the spaces there we go. You can use the spaces to just write a few thoughts on your takeaways from the conversation. And while you do that, I'd like to ask Anthony and Sadhu to also try to formulate some of their main takeaways or thoughts that have come up for them as a result of the discussion. And I have to say, we have to keep it relatively short. So if we could just think of like a few short takeaways from each of you, that we can share while everyone is sharing theirs. So how about we start with Sadhu? Are there any sort of thoughts that came to you or key takeaways based upon the discussion?
Yeah, thank you very much, mates. The first element came to my mind is about coordination. And I'm not stressing coordination at the higher level, but coordination also at the field level. So when you like to do some kind of layering, some kind of sequencing, and when you like to bring change within a specific geographic area, coordination matters. So it will be good for us wherever we are working to prioritize coordinating at the community level and not exclude also the community we are working with. Another element that coming to my mind, we have a lot of emergency funding going around. We have limited longer term funding, and we have also from year to year an increase in the need. So I think that, as I stated last time, it will be good to see as much as possible with the flexible funding how we can lay the foundation for longer term intervention. We have a lot of opportunity. We can learn and we can adopt also to the context to see what can we do. At times it is only the approach that I think that we have to change. We can do unconditional, but it is the livelihood that should be protected. We can top up with conditional. So it is just a matter of learning and adopting. So that is the third one that I'm going to focus more also. Learning is very good. Let us take time to learn, but let us also see how we can adapt it to a specific context. So it is not, we take it, this is the way ISA is doing, this is the way NRC is doing, we are going to adapt it to do it. No, take it and adapt it to the context. You can make better use of it and have also access to better outcome. Sorry for taking time.
Excellent. No, very, very well said. Thank you. Okay, over to you, Anthony. Key takeaways.
Yes, just I think agreeing with my colleague Sadul on learning and adaptation is key. I think he's already elaborated that there is no top-down approach. We have to learn and adapt. I will not elaborate anymore on that. I just wanted to also emphasize the fact that in the triple nexus approach context, complementarity and collective impact is key for success of any programming that I will be doing. Joint programming and the shared or collective outcomes is something I think that we need to have at the back of our mind. And then the other thing also that I wanted to share is that conflict peace building must be central from the time of design to implementation. As we've seen, conflict drives humanitarian need. It also destabilizes development and undermines progress towards peace. So those are my kind of quick key takeaways. Back to you, Mata.
Very, very well said. Very well said. So thank you for these. I think just to add my own, I mean, I couldn't agree more with both of you, and particularly the last comment that you made, Anthony, that, you know, peace building, conflict sensitive programming, taking community dynamics into account at the get-go is not just a humanitarian way to stabilize a humanitarian, but it's also for building the foundation farther along. So it's definitely a thread. It's both a humanitarian intervention and a development one that leads to sort of the ultimate goal. I think there were several questions in the worksheet about donor support. And there was also the very poignant question, I thought, which is how long is long enough to be able to address humanitarian needs while building foundations for development. And I think that, you know, I think BHA is sort of getting there with these multi-year programs. And for those of us that have implemented 5-year, we know that 5 years, you're just getting going, right? So, you know, donor flexibility and donor openness to be able to be adaptive to these environments that where there are these recurring short-term crises, right? But where the outcome is peace and development. Having donor support for that is good. And I like that there's more rapid response funds being set up within these programs, because these are communities that are disaster vulnerable, right? So with that, I very much appreciate your patience with my interruptions, both Anthony and Sadhu. I was trying my best to get through the whole the whole agenda, but I do hope that you feel that you've been able to contribute what you were hoping to. And thank you very much for this opportunity. And with that, I will hand it back to Nick.
Thank you, Meta. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Sadhu. That was, and thank you for all of the great comments and questions and observations. It's been a fascinating discussion, and I'm so happy that we could have everybody here. One thing that did strike me in the takeaway is one of the comments about centering affected people and how, in the process of doing this, as we think about, you know, our own efforts to integrate in these ways, we really keep central the idea of making sure that affected people have control and input into what's happening here. There are just so many moving parts in trying to make all of this line up. So I think that about wraps up the first session on sequencing, layering, and integrating this thematic area of the knowledge sharing series. We have another session tomorrow, starting at the same time, which is going to be a discussion among development actors. In that session, we're going to be exploring how development activities can better weather shocks through investment in preparedness and avoid backsliding and protect development gains during crises. This Thursday, also at the same time, we'll have the last session for this thematic area, which is going to be about leveraging different donor strengths to achieve HDP coherence, building diverse portfolios of different donors to get the job done. So this is the last thematic area in our series, and we're holding a closing event from this 4-month knowledge sharing series in a culmination event towards the end of September, and registration will launch soon. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this session so we can improve our future events. Our session survey is linked in the chat. It should only take around 3 minutes to complete, so please do that. We always pay attention to that feedback, and we love to hear positive feedback or suggestions and observations. We'll keep the Zoom meeting open, and we'll play some music in the background as you complete the survey. Thank you again for joining us. We hope to see you tomorrow and on Thursday for the other 2 sessions in this thematic area. Thank you again, everybody, and goodbye.